So in this video, really what I want to do is I want to be able to show you how you can build more of a predictable lead generation system. Because if you're a coach at the moment that's maybe sort of running on referrals or perhaps doesn't really have a system that's giving you the results that you really want, then this video I want to be sharing that. Now, when I'm thinking of predictable sort of lead generation, the first thing I'm thinking of is outreach. Now, you have to bear in mind my handwriting is always awful, but that's fine. So, outreach really is the main thing that's going to give you more predictability. Now, outreach can be broken into a few different parts. The first one being Sales Navigator. The second one being actually just warm outreach and being able to, send that first message. And then the third part being effectively sell by chat, right? And I'm going to cover all of these just so you have the full idea. So, firstly, we have Sales Navigator. Now, if you're not familiar with Sales Navigator, all this is going to help us do is basically create a very specific list of your sort of ideal client, right? And if you set this up correctly, then this just means that you have you should have a fairly decent list of these ideal clients, which you can then use this list and basically send 20 to 30 connection requests every single day, right? Now, this honestly doesn't take that much time, right? I mean, if you sit down, do these all in one go, might take you about maybe 5-10 minutes or something, right? Because assuming you set up the list correctly, most of the people on that list that you've made should be idle clients. Now, why do we do that, right? Why do we send these connection requests? Well, the reason being is that you want to, first of all, you want to be able to get in front of these people, right? Like, we're not trying to do cold outreach here. I'm not trying to pitch people. We want to get in front with our ideal clients so that we can start a conversation. And if they see that we've sent this connection request and they obviously, take a look at your profile and see a bit more about, who you are, what you do, the type of person you help and such, if that resonates with them, they're going to be more likely to accept that. And if they accept that connection request, that basically allows you to then obviously send them that first message. But the whole idea here is that they are familiar with you. They're familiar with like effectively, like who the type of person you help and why they might be messaging, or at least why you might be messaging them. Right. So this is really, really key. So, for example, right, if you're sending 20 to 30 connection requests every day, let's say, 4 to 5 a day accept, right? And that's not particularly bad, right? But let's say 4 to 5 accept. Then we want to move on to warm outreach, right? We want to then be able to send that first message. And so, really, we're going to focus on two things with warm outreach. We're going to focus with personalization as one thing, and then going to focus on a qualifying question for the second. So personalization. Now, I'm sure you're sort of aware of this, but personalization is really key to actually show that you've taken effectively just the literal effort to go out of your way and personalize this message to them, right? Because I'm sure you've had messages before which felt like it could just be sent to just about anyone. And so what we want to do, we want to personalize the message so that it feels it could only be sent to that person, right? So, for example, for me, I might look at some of their recent posts and see what specifically I can like compliment them on. Now, ideally, if you can compliment them on something they genuinely appreciate, that works even better, right? So, for example, if I see that, say, they've just, I don't know, won an award, they've just started a new podcast, or whatever it may be, or perhaps they went to an event and it went really well, I'm gonna, compliment them about it. I'm gonna, let them know, like, oh, and then actually I'm gonna sort of talk about that. Now, yeah, you don't want your compliment to ramble on and on, but you want to make sure it's personalized enough so that it actually feels like you put some effort in. Because this is actually going to be really crucial to getting a response rate. Because if the message you send, just the whole message you send, feel like it could be sent to anyone, it's not going to feel as relevant to the individual, which also means they're going to be less likely to respond. So that's personalization. Then we have qualifying question. Now, the reason being, or at least why I say qualifying question, is that a lot of the times when it comes to, say, like chats from the DMs, a lot of people get really casual. They get they ask really broad questions. They get really casual. Maybe they hop on a coffee chat call or something. But at the end of the day, it goes no further than that. And so, what I at least focus on is asking qualifying questions to really quickly identify if this person has a problem I can solve. right? And so, for example, because I obviously help coaches around LinkedIn for lead generation, I might ask them something around how their sort of LinkedIn lead gen is coming along, right? Now, this is obviously a very specific question, and sure, it's actually very specific, and it might even be a little, like I suppose, too personal at the beginning. But what this is going to do is effectively a few things, right? If people, obviously see that message, they look at my profile, if they have this problem, they may, decide that they're going to open up, right? And they'll say, oh, well, yeah, like LinkedIn lead gen's okay, or, it's all right, or it could be more consistent, or, whatever it might be. So they might open up right from the get go. The other thing they might do is they might say, yeah, I mean, it's okay, or, perhaps maybe it's good, right? Um, and then obviously the other thing as well, which you might also be familiar with, is that, you just effectively get ghosted. Now, this happens to everyone. There is no way you can not get ghosted, right? Because simply sometimes people don't have the problem that you help solve, and other times, they're like it might even also be the case that perhaps already invested with someone else, and so there seems no point to continue the conversation. But there's a few reasons for this. But at the end of the day, these are usually the type of responses you're going to get from that first message. And then really, from here, it's then actually going into sell by chat, right? Because this is where all we're trying to do here, right? This whole idea here is we're not trying to sell. We're simply trying to identify a problem that we can solve. And by this, I mean that they actually open up, right? If they open up to us about the sort of problem that they're facing, then all we want to effectively do, assuming they have, is immediately propose a call. Immediately propose a call to chat more. Because if they're in a position where they're open enough to tell you about the problem they're facing, they're most likely also in a position where they're open enough to hop on a conversation to at least hear how you could help them. Right. And like this is also the thing, right? The moment they tell you a problem, don't drag the conversation on. Just basically pretty much immediately propose the call. And that's pretty much that. Because they're going to be open enough to do that if they've been open enough to tell you about their problem. Now, let's say, for example, they haven't opened up, right? Let's say they said, okay, or, like, so for example, let's say a coach said, oh, yeah, lead gen's okay at the moment, or, something along those lines. Really, from there, you want to keep asking more qualifying questions, right? So, for example, like if someone said that lead generation was okay, I might actually go. So, for example, let's say they didn't really say that. Oh, hello, that's really bad. Let's say lead generation wasn't a problem. I might ask something like, "Oh, okay, what's the next step to make that better?" Right? Are the leads qualified, consistent enough? Or perhaps I could even ask something like, "Oh, okay, does that mean that you're like booking, 5 sales calls, say like a week, right?" Um, and if they say like no to this, right? Then obviously, from there I could be like, well, hey, if you find it useful, we can, hop on a chat, talk a bit more about if or how I could help you with this, right? So like it's trying to identify if there are any problems. Now, for example, right? If someone says that they're not booking 5 calls a week, that might not actually be a problem for them because, for example, if they're already maxed out on clients and they don't really have any more time, then obviously that's, a whole new conversation. But a lot of this is going to be on personal preference on how deep you push in. Because honestly speaking, like for example, with this, right? If a lot of people say, "Oh no, I don't have a problem," that's that. A lot of people will be like, "Okay," and move on to the next person. However, a lot of people will use that as a bit of a smokescreen to effectively say, "I'm not really sure if I want to have this conversation," or "It is a bit of a problem, but like I'm maybe a bit embarrassed to talk about it." So it's all down to personal preference on how much you push in the conversation. Now, obviously, that said, the more you push in a conversation, the more likely you are to maybe get a more negative response. However, you're also more likely to actually see if the prospect like does or doesn't have the problem you can solve. So, it's a bit of a like a double-edged sword, I would say. But overall, this is pretty much the process for really just getting more predictable leads through LinkedIn. Because I think outreach is really the best way you can do that, right? Because assuming that you have, your profile set up correctly, and you've at least got some content going out there to show that you do know what you're talking about, Outreach is the next best thing because if you can set up a sales navigator list that targets a very specific ideal client that you want, right, to make sure that you're getting those qualified prospects, you're sending the 20 to 30 connection requests every day, right? Which is effectively just going to always give you more people for warm outreach. And then all it really is then is trying to identify a problem, right? Some of the people that you connect with and you speak to aren't really going to have a problem, and that's fine. Because all we're trying to do is see if they have a problem by asking questions. And when they do open up about a problem, we propose the call. So, hopefully you found this useful. If you have any questions on this, do let me know. And if you are, I don't know, if you're curious to know a bit more about if or how I could help you be able to get more consistent leads and qualified leads on LinkedIn, then do see the link in the description to actually learn more on my website, see if or how I could help you. But other than that, cheers.